and the characters. One of the best known is the Ship Inn, now under threat of demolition at Circular Quay. The first drinkers get here at 6 a.m.
Fred, how long have you been drinking here?
Oh, I've been 2.5 years, 3 years.
Yeah, why do you drink so early in the morning?
Well, I like a drink when I feel like drinking.
You've been at sea for 3 months, 6 months. You come in, well, you know, you let it go loose.
I think the most unusual ones are the ones that have been hanging around here for so long. You know, and they go and buy their bottles and go and sit in the park and then come running in, screaming out at you and giving you a hard time, and you know, you really have a laugh at them. Like the one I was telling you about, Jerry, that wears the shorts and the raincoat.
I said to a bloke, what's the earliest time you can get a drink, you know? And he said, oh, the Ship Inn's open at 6 o'clock. And I said, oh, beauty. No ripper, hey, no worries. And so I rocked in here, eh? And it was bloody tops, mate.
If the Ship Inn represents one end of the pub and bar spectrum, heavily macho and breakfast drinking, the Exchange in Oxford Street profiles the other extreme. Along with names like Patches, the Flo's Palace, the Albury and Oxford hotels, it helps make up Sydney's gay Golden Mile.
Well, there's lots of other places around the town, but because I'm a gay guy, I can be accepted here.
It's very difficult to sort of go out to a really heavy straight place like Parramatta or somewhere.
I take all this off at the end of the night and I go home and I've got a baby and a wife.
I think people would be pretty amazed to hear that. You live a straight line?
Oh, I don't know if you call it straight, but it's kind of straight.
Sydney's emergence as the homosexual capital of Australia, in fact one of the largest gay communities in the world, is quite a recent happening. At the other end of the spectrum, and a situation which has been with us for 64 years, is the club scene. In fact, in 1956, when poker machines were licensed, clubs spread to just about every district of Sydney.
There wouldn't be too many Sydney-siders alive and over the age of 18 who haven't seen the inside of a club. Few people know about the support army working in other parts of the building, especially at the bigger clubs like Eastern Suburbs, South Sydney Juniors and St George, all with memberships around or in excess of 50,000.
When your feet have got the blues from trudging round in shoes, make them feel fine, feel just divine. Save your souls from the street, on land or in the heat. Bless your souls, Dr. Scholl. Bless your souls, Dr. Scholl. Save your souls from nagging feet. Healthy feet are pretty neat. Bless your souls, Dr. Scholl. Bless your souls, Dr. Scholl.
Take it from me, you get bedroom carpet free.
Hard to believe, but true.
Now the carpet merchants give you carpet for one bedroom free when you buy carpet bargains for the rest of your home. Godfrey Hirst bargains from $37.95 a metre. Highcraft bargains from $33.95 a metre. Look in your letterbox for more bargains. Buy 18 metres or more from these carpet merchants now, and you'll also get carpet only for one bedroom free.
Yes, the carpet merchants buy direct from the mills, so come on in for the bargains.
Come in and have a beep-o.
When someone told us that Philadelphia brand cream cheese was not quite perfect, we were naturally upset and a little confused. It's simply perfect for recipes and simply perfect to taste. It's even perfect for spread. So we did something about it. Soft Philadelphia brand cream cheese in a tub for spreading.
Simply perfect.
Simply Philly.
G'day.
G'day.
Beautiful little touring cars, aren't they?
Yeah.
Cheap too. Only $16 a day.
Oh, the disappointment when you discover what you could have saved on car rental in Britain through the world's favourite holiday book.
Mr. Bassman. Oh,
Now there's a move to trendy venues for the younger inner-city push, perhaps best represented by Kinsella's, formerly a funeral parlour in Taylor Square. It's meant a rebirth for entertainers like the Deltones and Little Paddy, who had feared they were in a time warp, singing in clubland to fans of the 50s and 60s. Here, many of their songs are being heard by a new audience for the first time.
I think clubs are very big and impersonal, and sometimes that's fine, but if you just want to go out with one other person, you choose to go elsewhere.
I joined the Deltones at 18, and that was very dramatic for me, and for the first 4 years, up to 1964, which was the end of our recording career.
So it was just the excitement of the newness?
Oh, well, it was totally new. Nobody had a clue what was happening back then. Not a damn clue. And it was just get out there and hope for the best. We just watched the Americans and ate them.
There was very little pressure, and I just sang because I enjoyed it. And I mean, I still enjoy it, but as you get older, you realise it's a profession and it's your job, and people have higher expectations. The pressures are greater. Nothing can replace your younger days.
I guess the most dramatic and dynamic performer we worked with was, of course, Johnny O'Keefe.
A Sydney boy himself?
Yeah, Sydney boy. He certainly brought from the stadium shows that we did together also at the time, he brought that same sort of excitement to the clubs. And in fact, we do in our show a tribute to Johnny right now, and it's probably the most exciting part of the show in many respects.
Yeah, what made him so special, do you think?
That's a very good question, what made him so special. He certainly couldn't sing, and no one would ever say he could. I think it was his dramatics. He was just as dramatic off stage as he was on.
Always a chance to meet somebody to foot the bill, having the drinks around the house.
I really enjoyed going to his shows. Like, I started going when I was about 8. He used to sneak us in backstage, which we got a buzz out of because we were only kids. And I think the most part that I enjoyed the most was watching the audience, you know. People, they weren't young. As he got older, the audience wasn't young because they grew up in his era. And you'd see them getting on seats and getting on tables, and for that age, you know, it really amazed me. So he really captured his audience.
Do you sing any of his songs now in the act?
Yeah, I do. I close the show with Shout.
Oh, you make me want to shout, throw my hand up and shout, kick my heels back and shout, throw my head up and shout, come on now, don't forget the thing.
These days, the top acts in Sydney are Julie Anthony, Ricky May, Jackie Love, Don Lane, the Deltones, John English and Marcia Hines, Kamal, Barry Crocker, Simon Gallagher and Kiri Adams.
It was a prawn, one of those famous prawn nights, and all males and all out of their brain. And I was singing another low, I thought it was a beautiful gown. And here's this guy who was absolutely out of his brain going, picking up prawns and going right for the cleavage, because I kept dodging him. But at that time I didn't appreciate it, but now I think it was funny.
This lady just flew into the dressing room, and she stood there and she said, I want you to sign something for me. So I said, oh, okay. So I got my felt pen out, and she just pulled the dress right up, and she was wearing these Christian Dior see-through panties, and she said, sign right there. And I went, what? She said, yeah. So I sort of, oh yeah, okay. I had an interesting night.
This is where the band
In the 50s and 60s, the Silver Spade Room was a regular venue for Lorraine Desmond, now better known for her role in Country Practice. That was before money from pokies spelled the nightclub's death knell by allowing cheaper entertainment. Here, Lorraine reminisces with top head waiters of the time, John Esterhazy and Ivor Balmain.
Older nightclubs, you know, the ones, the early up ones.
What about the old Celebrity?
What about the old? Well, of course I remember that because
remember
that
the
was my
time they pulled
first
you up
job.
on stage to sing? You came up on stage.
Yes.
And you put this number over, Nothing But a Liar. And the audience went mad. And they're all standing up, clapping like crazy. And this fool of a, well, this woman came running over. And I thought it was an autograph hunter.
Otherwise, you know, we don't let them across the stage. You never know what's going to happen. And she's pulling at your arm, and then I dashed over and she said, I'm from the Department of something or other, Child Welfare, that's right. And she said, this girl is not even 16.
Well,
she's not supposed to be on the
young,
stage.
didn't I?
1,000 dreams I dreamed, oh, the splendid things I planned. I always built to last on a weak and shifting sand. I live by night and shun the naked light of day. And only now I see how the years...
For Lorraine, the scene has gone full circle, and the club circuit is a means of showing her fans that the golden voice is still there. Later came the annual Mo Awards, which, although officially for live variety performers in general, are virtually Sydney's club awards. The awards were named in honour of the man regarded as Sydney's and Australia's greatest entertainer. His name, Mo, Roy Reen, or as he was known privately, Harry Vandersloot. He died in 1954, but not before his name was marked indelibly in Sydney's history. On stage and radio, with his top-rating show of the 40s, Mackackie Mansions, Mo was king.
And how was the business? Too scared to...
Harry Griffiths played the part of Maccackie's son, young Harry.
Al Ashford went out and introduced him. He said, ladies and gentlemen, Australia's own Roy Reen, Mo, and a big orchestra there, I think it was Jim Gussie's, plays Muzzletorp, which was his play on, and he just stuck his face around the post at the top of the stairs at Sydney Town Hall, and the roar went up. It was a roar of excitement, of expectation, it was more than just applause. It was something that had to be heard, to be understood, and once heard, never forgotten. It was almost his trademark. He came out from behind the post, and he walked down to the apron of the stage, right down to the front. And I'll show you what he did. Came down to the front. He did his bow to the public like that. And as he came up, he said, well, Sydney Town Hall holds 3,000 people. And what a laugh it was. When he finished that, he just does another bow, turns around, and does his walk off. As he came down the stairs, I was at the bottom of the stairs to meet him. I said, Mr. Reen, that was marvellous. What a laugh! He said, son, let's see the other mugs do that. I did it without opening my mouth.
Friday, stand by for one of the best Hollywood musicals ever made. Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor knocking you out in style.
With a hey nonny nonny and a ha cha cha.
From silence to talkies.
What's wrong with the way I talk?
And for the first sensational time in color.
Singing in the rain.
Singing in the Rain. What a glorious feeling. 8:30 Friday night on Channel 7.
Don't lose your cool this summer. Call the man from Carrier, the people who invented air conditioning, to keep any room Carrier cool, no matter how large or small. In fact, a call to Carrier can cool your whole home. Carrier technology even helps the astronauts keep their cool. Put this summer on ice. Call the man from Carrier and keep Carrier cool.
The quality of Nylex Premier is now available in reinforced super flat hose.
All on this light, easy wind cassette. Super strong, flexible. And kinky? Try doing this with any other hose.
It takes all Nylex Gardena fittings and is light and compact to take anywhere.
Nylex Super Flat Hose. The ultimate in convenience and performance. For our money, it's Nylex or it's nothing.
Holy mackerel. What a lot of whiskettes. It's like being let loose in a fish market. Look, ocean fish, mouth-watering tuna, juicy prawns, and sardines. Real fish. All cooked the Whiskett's way. It tastes so deliciously fishy. No wonder most cats prefer Whiskett's.
Come aboard, get to know, join the big, safe, friendly GIO. If you're on the land or a small businessman and you need a sound insurance plan, if you're single or a family man, if you own a home, a car, a boat or van, just come aboard, get to know the helpful people at the GIO. Come aboard, get to know, join the big, safe, friendly GIO.
Although his career continued into the early 50s, Moe's on-stage appearance, the Jewish makeup of chalk-white face and charcoal beard, plus matching character, reflected the depression trauma of the late 20s and early 30s. And years of trauma they were. In the early 1930s, 125,000 Sydney-siders were unemployed. Those lucky enough to be working on the bridge dubbed it the Iron Lung because the work it supplied was a lifesaver for many. Sydney has experienced 4 major depressions and numerous recessions. The first depression in established Sydney hit in the 1820s. Then came gold, and a golden period, which extended to the 1880s. The exhibition of 1878 was an international affair for which the Garden Palace was built. It stood for 5 years before being burnt to the ground in 1883. The palace dominated the Botanic Gardens area south of Government House, which itself had been built 35 years earlier. When the depression of the 1920s and 30s arrived, it was compounded by a huge coal strike, during which thousands of people marched to protest the killing of a miner called Norm Brown. It seems violence and crime were born of all depression eras.
It was during the 20s and the 30s that the razor gangs came to Darlinghurst. As a matter of fact, the area became known as Razorhurst. The pushers, or organised gangs, actually came into the area around about 1890 as an aftermath of the Great Depression at that time.
So far as really sophisticated organised crime, it developed in the mid-1960s. It ended the era at that time of the girls in East Sydney, and in came massage parlours, organised pornography and other sides of the vice trade. And of course the worst aspect of that is with that sort of development came the entry of organised crime into international drug trafficking in about 1967, and the vice field alone was the captive market for heroin. About 85% of the girls who work in the trade are heroin addicts. And so out of the organised gambling, with the money pot from that and the income from drugs, the new drug field, organised crime became very syndicated and very much on the American Godfather pattern.
But strangely, the government and police seemed to take their time to close them down, until the advent of Beck's raiders in 1979. Gaming squad boss Merv Beck showed that the illegal casinos could be closed down.
I could see no reason for them remaining open. And when I was called upon to do the job, I certainly saw that they were closed and remained closed in my time. There were many attempts to bribe me, but as to the identity of the people, you couldn't pinpoint that because the principals would be far removed.
And it was said afterwards that you could have been a millionaire on the proceeds.
Well, yes, I say that myself, that I could have been a millionaire.
Do you think any of
illegal casinos were said to be turning over $200 million a year before they were closed, and the syndication of SP betting, Bob Bottom estimates to be worth at least $1.4 billion a year.
There's generally, well, there is 8 people who tend to dominate the lot of it. Springing out from them are the various syndicates. Some look after vice, some look after drugs, others after gambling, and beyond that.
At the Moffat Royal Commission of 1974, witnesses included the man they called Sydney's Mr. Big, Lenny McPherson, now using the name of Leonard Murray.
Cover up for their own evil deeds, not mine.
There are a lot of politicians who've been making all sorts of statements, and they haven't come into the open yet.
I haven't heard them come forward since the inquiry. Why don't they come here now and give their evidence on the road?
Well, there is still some degree of corruption. I must acknowledge, though, the New South Wales police force at the moment will probably be cleanest it's been since the late 1930s with the clean-up of the razor gangs. But still, at a political level, there is still some corruption. In the past, it's reached extraordinary levels of government and police. In fact, we've had former commissioners of the police who have been absolute crooks. And indeed, at one stage, the underworld, the titular head of the underworld in this state was actually a policeman.
It should never be said that lawlessness completely characterised Sydney, but it has been pushed to the limits. And lately, there's been a disturbing trend in the sphere of terrorism, showing that Sydney is no longer isolated. The worst was the killing of 2 council workers and a policeman outside the Hilton Hotel, for which the Ananda Marga religious sect was blamed. And then there was the assassination of the Turkish consul in late 1980 in Vaucluse, and most recently, the bombing of the Israeli consulate in the Westfield building. One of the most recent killings in Sydney was also one of the most chilling, the slash mutilation murder of nurses at a retarded children's home in Glenfield.
There was a similar murderer in the last century known as the Mutilator, but probably the most famous case, because of the emotional impact it caused, was the case of John and Sarah Macon, known as the Baby Farmers. What they did, in effect, was take the children from couples who couldn't afford to keep them and then sell them to the highest bidder. Those children that they couldn't sell, they simply murdered. And 7 bodies were found in their backyard. John Macon was hung. Sarah received 14 years in prison.
In Sydney's history, there have been several murders which stood out from the rest, especially in the early and mid-60s. More than any was the case which saw the happiness and excitement of a $200,000 Opera House lottery win turn sour. The kidnap and murder in July 1960 of 8-year-old Graham Thorne. Graham became the first kidnapped murder victim in Sydney and Australia. After the kidnapping, the Thornes received a phone call. The male caller said in a foreign accent that he wanted £25,000 or he would feed the boy to the sharks.
Somebody had rang demanding a sum of money which I'm not going to... Well, I don't know what it was, and so you can imagine how upset I am that it was like that. But, and then,
The caller never tried to collect the ransom, and 6 weeks after his disappearance, the body of Graham Thorne was found wedged under a rock ledge in Seaforth. The rug he was wrapped in led, through brilliant forensic investigation, to the murderer, Stephen Bradley. Bradley was extradited from Ceylon before his sentencing to life imprisonment. He died of a heart attack in prison in 1968. 2.5 years after the Graham Thorne murder, on New Year's Day 1963, 2 partly clad bodies were discovered in the Lane Cove National Park, next to the river, 100 metres from Fuller's Bridge. The murder of Dr. Gilbert Bogle and Mrs. Margaret Chandler remains one of Sydney's great unsolved mysteries. There were no signs of violence at the scene, and more than 20 years and many extensive forensic tests later, no one has found out how or why 2 healthy people died within roughly an hour of each other. All post-mortem tests were negative. But since then, Dr. Bogle has been linked with secret CIA and FBI files in America and the world of atomic espionage. Another 2 years later, in 1965, Sydney reeled to the news of a vicious thrill killing of 2 teenage girls at Wanda Beach. The victims were 15-year-old West Ryde neighbours Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sharrock. Their mutilated and sexually assaulted bodies were found buried in the desolate sandhills at Wanda Beach. Again, the killer went free. Ironically, very few people remember the murder for which John Trevor Kelly, aged 24, was hanged. Ironic because he was the last person hanged in Sydney in August 1939.
And so this was the cell where Kelly would have spent his last night, the condemned cell. Actually, it's a double cell, the condemned man in here, and then sitting out here in an annex, the prison warder. His job was to ensure that the prisoner, the condemned man, didn't cheat the hangman of his job. And so Kelly would have taken those 5 or 6 steps out here to the gallows. And we're in Wing 4 of the Central Industrial Prison.